Hello, welcome to the Fancy Scientist podcast. On today's episode, we're talking about a really important issue, one that is near and dear to my heart, and that is mental health, specifically anxiety and depression, two things that I have personally struggled with. Now, you might be thinking, especially if this is your first podcast, this is a nature, wildlife, science, and career podcast associated with those fields. Why are we talking about mental health? Well, first, if you are interested in nature, you most certainly are interested in conservation. They're pretty much intertwined as nature has suffered so much biodiversity loss over the past few decades. And the nature, no pun intended, of our field when dealing with conservation is inherently dealing with a lot of loss. And I've talked about this in other podcast episodes about adopting a positive mindset and a more optimistic outlook in terms of handling this biodiversity crisis. Just the nature of our field can be a downer, can be depressing. Or if you're trying to help animals and you're working in wildlife rehabilitation, there are things about fields like ours that sometimes you have to make difficult decisions and euthanize animals. So there can be some really heavy things that we have to deal with in this career. And also, just like if you're volunteering or if you care, there's just some really heavy topics that we have to deal with. So this episode will help you cope with what's going on in the world in terms of loss. I have another podcast episode about dealing with eco-anxiety that's also really helpful as well. And then another reason, a big reason, is that people in our field, this used to not be talked about, but people in our field are really struggling. And more recently, the scientific journals, the major ones, Nature and Science, have had articles about graduate students in particular really suffering from mental health disorders, definitely anxiety, definitely depression, mostly because of the demands that are on us. The competition is stronger for jobs. So there's just more expectations out there of what we are supposed to do, how many papers we're supposed to publish, what is needed to get a job, the amount of grants or money that you're bringing in. And it's just a lot for people to deal with. And then when they go into these entry-level jobs, or if you're going to be a professor, the expectations are just so different than what they used to be decades ago. And it's tough. This is tough for a lot of people to deal with, and they're struggling. I read Facebook posts out there of my friends going through graduate school. I, of course, remember my own graduate experience that you're going to hear about in this episode. And it's a challenging time. And even if you're not in graduate school, unfortunately, in a lot of career settings, they expect you to work all the time for your personal health, your personal well-being to take a back seat. And a lot of people neglect themselves. Whether you are in this field or not, you're listening because you care to some extent, and that might be affecting you. It's probably affecting you to some degree. If you care, you can't not feel sad about the things that are going around us in terms of the loss of biodiversity, the climate crisis. What we're going to be talking about specifically in this episode is how I went off of my antidepressants, but also in general, this is just a great episode on self-care. I'm going to share my story with you, and I'm going to share with you a bunch of tools and mindset work that I have learned over the years that works. It's truly effective. And I am now 100% off of my antidepressants. If you're on antidepressants, I'm not trying to convince you to go off of them or anything. I'm just here to share my story and what worked for me. I'm not trying to convince you to do anything. I do have my doctorate, but I am not a doctor, so there's no medical advice in here at all. This is simply sharing what I know has really helped my mental health. So much so that I have been able to go off of my antidepressants. I was on two different kinds. I have been on them, honestly, probably since 2007, I think. And I was on antidepressants a little bit before then, but I went off. I have been on antidepressants for almost 20 years. That's pretty much all of my adult life. And like I said, I have gone off them. It's not been easy. So, this episode, I am going to share with you how I did it all. If you know someone with depression, anxiety, or just somebody who's struggling and having a hard time right now, please share this episode with them. You never know who it can help. And I have always been really transparent about these topics while other people haven't. And I'm so glad people are finally talking about this stuff because there's no shame and there should be no guilt in feeling this way and feeling the way that you feel. I know for a fact that so many people struggle with these issues in our field, and any person that I can help, that I can reach, is just so valuable. By the end of this episode, if it has helped you, please reach out to me and let me know. I love to hear from all of you. You can find all my social channels in the show notes. Okay, let me start with sharing why I went on antidepressants in the first place. I love my family so much. I love my parents so much, but I do think that they had a more negative mindset. And on my mother's side, especially, there were depressive tendencies. And my grandmother was actually hospitalized for some psychiatric incident. People didn't talk about things back then, so I don't know the details about it, but I do know that she was hospitalized for a few days for not being herself. That's what I was told, not quote unquote being herself and then snapping out of it. But I know just from the way that my mother acted, and even my dad, who is a more positive, optimistic person of the family, he could adopt a real pessimistic attitude, especially based on his career when things didn't go the way that he wanted them to. He owns his own store and is a salesman. And if he didn't make a sale, he would take that really personally. So, this is what I grew up with. And I always thought I had a chemical imbalance. And there are people who have chemical imbalances. But in my case, I don't know if that was true. I thought I did because I just couldn't understand why I couldn't be happy despite everything in my life being amazing and having everything going for me. I just couldn't find joy in the simple little things. And I would also lose joy in doing the things that I used to do as a kid. During my college years, I definitely struggled. I didn't go away to college like my friends did. And I felt major FOMO. I felt like I was missing out a lot on the college experience. All my friends were having this great time dorming. I didn't really know what I was doing in college. So I did a really bad college search and applied for a bunch of different schools. I didn't get into any except for a couple that were more expensive. And since I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't want to go to those schools and waste money essentially. So I stayed home. I went to my local school where I had a scholarship. I thought I would go there until I figured things out and then transfer, but I just never ended up transferring. And because I went to a local school that was only like 15 minutes away from my parents' house, I didn't think it made sense to dorm. So I stayed with my parents and I didn't really make friends. And that was tough. That's really when I mean, in my teenage years, I struggled with depression, but in college was when I started going on antidepressants. I kind of like asked for it, if I remember correctly. And I just said, I'm having a tough time. I need some help. And then, like I said, I went on and off them. In graduate school, I decided to do therapy. I knew I wanted to do therapy because I knew it was going to be a difficult time in my life, just given the nature of doing your PhD. And I was diagnosed with anxiety, actually. I was really surprised because I didn't know what anxiety was. I thought I was depressed, but they gave them to me for anxiety. So that's when I started my antidepressants. And antidepressants worked really well for me. I was on Prozac. For a long time, I was on Prozac only. But throughout my life, I went through some difficult patches and did go on some additional antidepressants. And then several years ago, I was still on two different antidepressants. I had been thinking about going off of antidepressants since maybe around 2020. I started exploring the option because that's when I really started delving into mindset work. So I took this course where I learned about how our brains function and about how we think our thoughts, and that our emotions come from our thoughts. We all start with a thought, and that really blew my mind. I had heard about people going off of their antidepressants, and I thought that's something that like I wanted to do, but I didn't think it was possible for me. I actually had doctors that would tell me you will be on antidepressants for the rest of your life. So I didn't know it was an option. Then, starting in 2020, I also got restless leg syndrome. I was actually diagnosed before that with it through a sleep study, but that's when I started to notice it affecting my life. My legs were really uncomfortable. It was really hard to sit still and work, and it progressed and progressed. And it wasn't until recently that I found some relief in Biquinol, actually, not from going off of my antidepressants, but I heard or had read some things, and I thought potentially my antidepressants could be contributing to my restless leg syndrome. So I was interested in going off of them for that reason. I also had something happen to me that I never thought would happen. I accidentally got pregnant. I was at the time, I think 41 or 42, and women's fertility is low at that point. I really didn't think it was possible for me to get pregnant due to the nature of my body. I never cycled regularly. I just thought that would be a difficult thing to happen to me, even if I wanted it, and I was not trying to get this. And I was on birth control, but it was not hormonal, so it's not the most effective. This was a total shock to me, like total shock. So because I was pregnant, the doctors recommended that I go off of one of my antidepressants. And this one was a low dose, so that one was easy to go off of. And the goal was to lower the dose of the other one. And I was like, okay, well, I just want to get off of it completely because I don't want to harm the fetus in any way. But with antidepressants, you can't just stop cold turkey. You got to taper off. So at that point, I was tapering off. I did end up miscarrying, but I was able to handle my life, what I was going through so well. I just was doing so well in life. Things were going so well for me. And because of all this mindset work that I had done starting in 2020, I decided to just keep going and just keep trying to go off of my antidepressants. And my doctor was really supportive of it. Even actually before I got pregnant, he told me that I could go off of them and he encouraged me to. Well, he asked me how I felt about it. But when I said I wanted to, he was very encouraging. So that's the story of how I started to go off of them. And just slowly over time, I have been reducing the number of pills that I took with Prozac. I was on the generic form, fluoxetine, and you could reduce the number of pills that you took. So I did this, and then I would say in about February of this year, I have been completely off since then. And one of the reasons, another reason actually, I talked about a couple, but another reason is that I wanted to be me. After learning all of the things about mindset, about how our minds work, I started to think that I actually don't think that I do have a chemical imbalance. I think that I just wasn't given the tools to be able to talk to myself in a caring and loving way, and that I was so hard on myself. And what I worried about with being on antidepressants for me is that it was suppressing a lot of the emotions that I was feeling. And let me just give you some examples. Recently, I have been going through some tough times, actually. I'm making this sound like it was so easy, but it wasn't. And actually, it was not that bad for a long time. But recently, I had a major life event happen. My boyfriend moved in with me, and just there was a lot going on. And my depressive and anxious thoughts started coming back like tremendously. I was the type of person who would like never cry at movies. And I would even say, like, oh, I rarely cry anymore. And I have done more crying in the past month than I have probably in years. So I think that antidepressants, like I said, they were suppressing emotions in me. And I wanted to go off of them because I wanted to fully experience what I was feeling, not just to like have this emotional experience. That actually wasn't my priority. My priority was rather to like work through the things that I have experienced because your body remembers, your body feels things, and it does this to prepare for the next event. So it feels things like, say you do something that is really embarrassing to you, or you feel embarrassment. Like, say you're giving a public speech and you don't do a good job and you feel really embarrassed by it. Well, your body like holds on to it and remembers that feeling, remembers that emotion. So the next time you're in a situation where you have to do a public speech, it brings it up and it gives you that similar emotion back as a means to protect yourself so that you don't put yourself in a situation like that again. So I felt like I had all these experience like it's stored in me, but I never resolved them. Even dealing with my mother's passing, and now my mom, she died of breast cancer, which 20 years later metastasized into liver cancer. And she lived a long time with liver cancer. So we knew that she defied the odds. And basically, I just never knew when the last time would be that I would see her. But she kept living and living and living. So I had a long time to prepare for her ultimate passing. And what I wanted to say from this is that, like, when it happened, it was expected completely, but it also should have been much more emotional than it was. And it was hard for me to get emotional because I think my emotions had just been like so dulled by the antidepressants. I really wanted to like feel things and have my experiences teach me lessons. Honestly, I know that sounds weird, but I wanted to welcome the lessons. So it felt like the antidepressants were helping me bury my thoughts and not letting me face them head on. So here's one of the mindset things that I have learned is that your emotions are teachers. They're telling you something. So now when I feel emotions, I get curious about it. I focus on it and I work to identify what are the underlying beliefs that I have under those emotions. And those underlying beliefs, if I believe them, they are thwarting me and my success in some way because I deep down I still believe in them. But if I'm not feeling those emotions and those beliefs are still there, they're still thwarting me, but I haven't had the opportunity to really dig into them and work into them, to really dig into them and work on them. And I recently started therapy again, and I have been in therapy on and off for a long time. And I love my therapist. I chose her consciously because, let me read you this. She has on her website, "We are what we think." So I knew when I was in therapy, it was going to be mindset work. And I read her bio, and she does a lot of mindset work. She's incredibly knowledgeable about the brain. So we really focus on what are those underlying beliefs. And when having talked to her, well, she also believes that I don't have a chemical imbalance. I've never really dissected my beliefs, evaluate if they're true or not, or if I just didn't know how to talk to myself. So by going off of my antidepressants, this has given me the opportunity to experience all these emotions, identify the underlying beliefs beneath them, and then that really helps me figure out like what I want and what is working for me and what is working against me and work on that. Another reason why I think I've been able to get off of my antidepressants more recently is that I have been taking really great care of myself. I have been working on my mind, but I've also been taking care of myself physically as well. I enrolled in a fitness program. I have been doing strength training. I have lost weight. I've been doing 10,000 steps every day. I've been getting cardio in twice a week, and I stopped drinking for the most part. My nutrition is so on track. I have optimized my supplements. And I just have been doing so well. So that was another big reason of why I could go off of my antidepressants. But like I said, it hasn't been easy, and there's been things that have popped up. I mentioned that I recently went through a really rough patch where I had a hard time coping emotionally, but also focusing. I had a really hard time with the emotions. There were so many emotions going on, but I also lost my motivation for doing things. I had really strong motivation before, and especially in my career, and I started to lose that a little bit. I was still struggling, and I welcomed every opportunity that I could to get help. Like I mentioned, I got therapy, and this one company, Magic Mind, reached out to me during this time. So, something that has really helped me work through these slumps where I was having a really hard time being motivated and focused was their mental performance shots. They reached out to me, like, honestly, during a hard time. I think they must have known. They must have known that I was going through a rough patch, and they offered to send me their mental performance shots. And I was like, okay, I need all the help I can get. And I had been listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger's podcast. I had just heard about a study about ashwagandha, and their shots have ashwagandha in it. I read that ashwagandha reduces stress, cortisol. So I was like, I'm so stressed out. I'm having such a hard time. I definitely want to try these. I just want to thank Magic Mind so much for sponsoring this podcast episode. I'm so excited we have a podcast sponsor, and their mental performance shots for supporting me during this time. I honestly had a really hard time focusing, and their shots with all of these really high quality ingredients like matcha tea, which I love, cordyceps, which I've been wanting to try, lion's mane mushrooms, which I've heard has been so great for you. In fact, their ingredients are backed by over 200 scientific studies. I love that they're science based. They're made alongside of a scientific advisory panel, and I'm going to put this all in the show notes because I know you guys are a very science minded audience, of course, and you like to do your own research. They also do really great work. They are climate neutral. And for every bottle sold, they donate to mental health charities and for people experiencing homelessness. So they partnered with me to create a special deal for you where you can get up to 60% off if you start a subscription. Just go to magicmind.com/fancymm to claim this huge 60% offer. If you don't want to subscribe and you just want to try it out, you can use the code FANCYS20 at checkout and you will get 20% off. Like I said, I've been using them now for a couple of weeks and they have really helped me out. So give them a try and let me know what you think. It's really important to optimize your health. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but I encourage you to seek out a doctor and check some of the things that are regularly associated with feeling down or having a hard time. Things like vitamin D, your thyroid. Those are things that I have suffered with in the past, and those can have a dramatic impact on your health. Make sure you're getting exercise. I prioritize strength training. I do this 4 times a week where I'm in the gym lifting heavy weights. And then I take a lot of walks. I get 10,000 steps a day. These are not really cardio intensive, they're dog walks. And I also get out in nature because the benefits of nature are just so massive. There's so many studies, there's so much research to support the mental health benefits of nature. In fact, there's this one study where going outside, I believe as little as 10 minutes can impact your mental health, help with depression and anxiety. And this was a study conducted in college students. So make sure that you are getting outside. And then for me, I do cardio twice a week. So get that exercise in, get outside. Those honestly are things that have really supported me mentally. And I remember when I was in Raleigh and at the time I was married, sometimes my ex-husband would take the dogs for a walk and I wouldn't be really getting outside regularly. And I remember feeling cranky. Or sometimes I delay my dog walks until the evening and I could feel myself getting cranky throughout the day. And then once I'm outside in nature, it really helps. And nature does not have to be a pristine park. It can be walking in a city where there are trees. It can be walking in a manicured lawn. It can actually even be looking at pictures of nature that has been shown to be really, really helpful for people. Research backs all this stuff. So get yourself a nature screensaver, a nature desktop. And when you're feeling like you need the help, stare at those beautiful pictures of nature and just take some moments for yourself. Let's get back to mindset. Mindset is huge. And if you are a student in the Successful Wildlife Professional, I used to have this bonus course. It's still a bonus course, but I used to have it separate. It's called Mindset to Success. And now I have embedded it into my trainings because a lot of students, they skip mindset. They don't think it's that important, but it's really the foundation of everything. And like I said, I don't think I had a chemical imbalance. I think I didn't know how to talk to myself. I had to learn how to cultivate my own feelings of feeling good. I was so used to being depressed, to focusing on the negative, and that is what we're evolutionarily wired to do. I had to learn, and I'm still learning this. Now that I'm completely off, it's still a challenge, and I still focus on this every day. But focusing on what is good in my life, what is right, how I am proud of myself, those are really important things because I wasn't taught those things. When I'm feeling upset, when I'm feeling depressed or anxious, I definitely let myself feel that feeling. I take the time to really feel the emotions and process them. And I also, when I've gone through the proper work of feeling the feeling, and there's a lot of physiological stuff that I do. This is, again, is way too much to cover here. So that's why I have my whole Mindset to Success bonus course in the Successful Wildlife Professional, where we do something every week for 16 weeks. There's exercises that go along with it as well. I do like physiological work with it. Like some of that is exercise, actually. It might be breathing work, it might be meditations, using Insight Timer. That's a free app that is really helpful. But like once I've processed the emotion, another thing I do is like search for the next best feeling. And there's like an emotional ladder. Whereas if you're in depression, if you're in anxiety or these feelings of struggle, it's going to be really hard for you to go down there up into joy. That is like such a jump. That's such a huge jump. So, what you want to do is go for the next best feeling. And I heard this recording, I loved it, where they were talking about how anger is actually a positive step forward from depressed. Because in anger, you actually get some of your power back. When you're feeling depressed, you're kind of like totally hopeless and sad. But when you're angry, you're like, this is pissing me off. And like, you kind of want to do something. You feel like I just said, like, I can do something about this. Like, you feel like you have your power back. You're upset. And that is a big difference from feeling hopeless and defeated. So, what is the next best feeling that you can realistically go for? And then let yourself be in that feeling. And yeah, anger is not the greatest feeling to stay in. It's not a super empowering It's obviously not very optimistic. You might piss off a lot of people around you, but the idea is not to stay stuck in anger forever. Once you're in anger, then you can move up to the next rung on the ladder, and then you can move up to the next rung, and then you keep moving up the rungs until you are in places of joy and genuinely feeling that joy. When I was talking to my students the other day, I was giving the example of how I dealt with body image issues. For me, it was really hard for me to love my body, and I couldn't just go from like I hate my body to like I love my body. So I would use these ladders to help me be okay with or eventually moving towards I love my body. So I would start with, okay, like my default thought would be like, I hate my body or my body's ugly or something like that, or I don't like my stomach. Then it would be like, it's not that bad. It could be worse. Then it might be like, my body's okay, just like more of a neutral one. I have an okay body. And then it might even be pretty positive. My body's pretty good. Like, not doing too bad. It's pretty good. And then you can move up from there. So you can see how the progression takes place and you can see how it can be really helpful. So this is what I have been using. One tactic that has been really helpful for me is journaling. I do 10 things. Now, 10 might sound like a lot, or maybe it doesn't even sound like that much at all. But when you actually think about 10 things each day, it can be hard. It's kind of like a gratitude journal, but it's a little bit different. I do either 10 things that were good that happened to me in that day or that I'm proud of. So it could be like I worked really well. I did like a flown session. This is a co-working session I do. I did it for 2 hours and I was really focused that whole time. That could be something super small that I'm proud of. Or something good that happened to me. Like maybe I saw a new species of bumblebee, or maybe I just saw a really cute species of bumblebee, or maybe my dogs made me laugh. Like it can be these really simple little things. And of course, it can be the big things. What you focus on grows. And actually, my therapist told me this today. She said, what you focus on multiplies. What you're doing is you're teaching your brain to become focused on these things. And then once your brain like learns that, then it will continue to focus on them. And you're teaching it to automatically focus on the good things in your life. So I love those strategies. Some more strategies I have for you is to really learn how to talk to yourself and love yourself. I have 2 books. I'm going to link them in the show notes. One of them is called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. And the other book is Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. I highly recommend both these books. I always thought I loved myself, but in Kamal's book, he really goes into how to do this. He provides meditations. He provides, of course, his story, lots of background information on it. It is just so helpful. And once you listen to this book, you realize you're probably not loving yourself as deeply as you could be loving yourself and what it truly means to love yourself. And this is not an egotistical thing. This is not like you become a narcissist. It's about giving yourself the love that you probably didn't get. No matter how amazing your parents or caretakers were, pretty much all of us are lacking something, needing something that we didn't get. So this book goes into depth about how to do that. And I didn't know how to talk to myself. And by talking to yourself, yes, you can physically like out loud speak to yourself, but you're talking to yourself constantly all day long in your thoughts. So what are your thoughts saying to you? Are they positive things or are they negative things? My bet is that they're negative things. So in the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, it explains all about that. He holds his PhD, he's a scientist, and I highly recommend the self-talk app. It is funny if you are a millennial like me, you might remember Saturday Night Live back in the 90s. There was this skit where I can't remember what actor it was, but he looked himself in the mirror and he would say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me, or something like that. And this is kind of like what that self-talk is. But the idea is like you're picking up the talk from other people around you when you were a child. And if your parents didn't have great self-talk for themselves, or if they didn't talk well to you or to other people, that's the self-talk that you're using on yourself. It's a subscription and I listen to it and you just do it while you're doing other things and you let it play in the background and you don't worry about it too much. You don't focus on it too much. And the idea is to rewire, again, your neurons, to rewire your self talk. It's kind of like learning another language. It is very similar to learning another language, where if you're around another language all the time, you're going to eventually pick it up. So that's what you're trying to do. You're unconsciously learning how to talk to yourself. And I used to think that your emotions just like came, and it's not that way. You start with a thought. So your thoughts come first, and then your emotions come, probably less than milliseconds. So it's really difficult to tell the difference, but it all starts with thoughts. So if you can change your thoughts, you can change your life. A really big thing that has helped me is meditation, and not just closing my eyes and being silent, but being guided. Guided meditations have helped me a lot. And I recommend Insight Timer. There's a person I like on there, David G. I will put his link in the show notes. I think he is fantastic, because a lot of people think that meditation is boring. And I used to think that too. But when it's guided, part of it is being in quiet, but also it's listening to people who have really soothing words, who teach you ways of providing comfort to yourself, of working through those emotions, of providing that self-care, providing that love. And I've also been doing a lot of Joe Dispenza meditations. I know a lot of you guys out there are probably very science oriented, and these meditations tend to be more spiritual. So if that doesn't align with your religion, just take it with a grain of salt. But for me, having some trust in that everything is going to be okay, and that honestly, that like the universe supports me, and like no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay, and that things are always going to work out for me, whether it's true or not. Believing in that has helped me so much. It's helped me immensely. So I am going to pass those tips on to you, and you can do what you want with them, but they have worked wonderfully for me. And again, all of this stuff will be in the show notes. So make sure you head over to the Fancy Scientist website page to get all of this information. And then two more things before we wrap up. One is just listening to music. Like, listen to music that's like fun, that's empowering, that can change your mood, that can help you so much. Listen to music that lifts you up. I have some power playlists. I think I'll add those in the show notes as well. That can be really helpful. And then also, when you're feeling sad, I actually find listening to sad music really helpful as well, because it helps me emote more. It helps me get it all out, because sometimes the emotions, especially when I was on my antidepressants, they felt like stuck. So listening to the sad songs, listening to the music can help get that out. This last one is the one that I honestly probably struggle with the most, because I, in my life, have always been so like goal oriented, and I've always tried to be like so productive. And this is to just have fun. Like, I have fun in my job and I love what I do. That's why I do what I do. That's why I created my career. But to just have fun for the sake of having fun, to like not be productive, is so hard for me. And actually, I'm going to reframe my language. Is something that I'm not used to doing. It's a habit. I'm not used to it. It's not hard for me, because that's a choice I get to make. I get to choose whether it's hard for me or not, but it's a habit that I have not been engaged in. And having my family visit this past week was so helpful for me, because we just had so much fun, like poking fun at each other, like laughing, making jokes. And it was just so nice to let go and just have fun. So think in your life, think back to your childhood. Like, what were things that you did that you had fun? Or like, what can you do? Like, not everything is going to be quote unquote fun. What can you do to add more pleasure into your life for the things that aren't as much fun? Maybe you don't love doing your finances. Can you drink a really fancy, fun tea when you're doing your finances? I listen to a fun playlist when I do my finances. What are some things that you can do to lift your spirits, to lighten things. And when we feel lighter, when we feel better, we also do better work as well. One final thing I would want to add with the mindset stuff is these reframes. Like, what is this moment that you're feeling down? What is it giving you? What is it letting you do, be, feel? I shared with you my experiences of wanting the emotion to be the teacher to lead me to the belief. So if you're feeling down about something, for example, I was talking to somebody the other day who had an injury and they're not able to participate in their job anymore. They feel like they're missing out on some experiences that would really benefit them. What is this an opportunity for you to focus on? And I have this really great story from one of my coaches, one of my fitness coaches, where he used to do these competitions and he was really strong in his legs. His legs were always like his best asset. And he injured one of his legs right before competition. Like, I think it was like a month out or something. And rather than being upset about it, well, of course he was upset initially, but rather than being upset the whole time, he used that approach. Like, okay, like I can't work out with my legs, but what can I focus on? And he focused on his upper body. And he made sure to get his upper body in really great shape. And then his leg healed enough that he could work on it right before the competition. And he ended up winning that competition. And he probably wouldn't have if he had not had the time to really focus on his upper body, because that was a weak area and he really liked working on his legs. So something is going wrong for you. Like, what can you focus on? How is this helping you or enabling you or allowing you to work on an area of your life that maybe needs some attention? Like I mentioned, being off of my antidepressants, it gave me the emotion to let me experience things and lead me to understand the underlying belief, and then also get help again, go to therapy again, and lead me to my therapist who's really helping me work on these underlying beliefs and thoughts. And beliefs are really just thoughts you think over and over and over again, and really get to the root of them. You got to slow down to speed up, and that's what I'm doing. I hope this episode helped you. Again, please share it with somebody who is struggling when it comes to conservation. Maybe there is some silver lining to some conservation issue that you are working on. Maybe the devastation that is going on in some area that you are focusing on, maybe that allows for a conversation to happen with somebody you normally wouldn't talk to. Maybe that opens doors to other stakeholders and other options and other solutions that end up actually being more effective. Be open, be creative to the solutions, and see how this can unfold in a way that is desirable. When I get down about conservation, I think about all of the environmental destruction that has happened in the past and the restoration efforts. Here, the Chicago River used to run backwards. It was so polluted. Mammal species across the United States were hunted to almost extinction for a lot of species, and so many of them have made strong recoveries. If you look back into like the early 1900s, people were hunting like crazy, and that's why state agencies developed, because there was so much overhunting going on. So the earth is really resilient, and despite what it seems, there are opportunities to heal and move forward. So think about how you can use some of the things that I've talked to you about today, not only in your own life, but also in your conservation work. And focus on the good, focus on the positive. If you're on YouTube, I am going to give you your next podcast episode to watch. It is podcast number 118 with John Taylor of Conservation Optimism, and he's going to give you tons of tips about how to maintain optimism in conservation and why it is so important. And thank you once again to our sponsor, Magic Mind. Go to magicmind.com FancyMM to get up to 60% off your subscription, or enter the promo code FancyS20 to get 20% off a single purchase. Let me know what you think about them. Have an amazing day. Be kind to animals, be kind to yourself, and reach out to talk to me. I love to hear from you. Bye.